with the strategic plan. Yes, we say that our launch date is January 1st, but we've been working on some things for several months that are going to manifest and create that flywheel effect. It's not sequential at all, Keith. It's parallel.
Right. Yeah, you got to fix the plane while you're flying it.
Yes.
I think is one of those analogies that gets tossed around. Yeah, makes sense.
While FAA is not getting paid.
Yeah. All of that.
You talk about it privately. We talk about it publicly. This is the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered podcast. Welcome again to the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered podcast. I'm your host, Dwiggy, along with Mr. Crazy Uncle Keith.
What up, Dwiggy?
Oh, man, this is an interesting one. We're a day after NAR approved the new strategic plan. Yeah. We got to sit down with Nykia Wright. She hasn't been on here for about a year. And I don't even know where to begin. I'll let you give the overview. But this was just such an interesting conversation because I think we got Nykia in her element, just sharing everything, like the good, the bad, jump in a little bit and give people kind of a background. So
yeah, it's interesting to compare the conversation from over a year ago to the conversation that we just had. And I agree with you. Not that she wasn't all these things before, but she was just even more of them, right? She was vulnerable. She was honest. She talked about the problems of the past candidly, openly, addressed them head on, talked about her solutions for the future. I mean, y'all, look, this is really a master class and a turnaround from the person who is leading it, the depth of team that she is building and built, and how she plans on, and the roadmap, just laying out exactly how she plans to go from a 30,000 foot vision to what will help real estate professionals in dining rooms and conference rooms. She takes through the whole thing in a very vulnerable, open, and honest way. She also shared her favorite color. So now you know that. But I just really loved the conversation and found myself taking a ton of notes on, man, this is just a master class on how to do a turnaround. You're going to dig it. Put it in your ears, kids.
Nykia, welcome back to the show. We are so excited to have you here. And I guess we should start with congratulations. The strategic plan was voted on and approved by exec. That's got to be exciting.
Very, very exciting, James. A lot of work went into that, leveraging the entire ecosystem. So we could not be more satisfied today.
Well, we're excited to go through some of that with you as well. And it's been a while, right? So we had you on the show last time, I think was, let's see here, it was basically about a year ago, but you became full-time CEO in August 19th of 2024. I guess let's just start there since we had the previous show. And by the way, for viewers and listeners, we'll have the link in the show notes to when Nykia first arrived on this crazy show that Keith and I do. But I guess let's start with that. Just, it's been over a year. Talk to us about the state of NAR between then and now. What were the main issues that you uncovered or faced in the organization? I'd love to hear kind of your take for roughly
such a quiet time in residential real estate to take over as CEO. We thought you could share with.
No, it has been a whirlwind, but I am very, very pleased with the amount of progress that we have made in a year. James, sometimes I anchor things in sort of historical business context. And whether it's a turnaround or an acquisition, most people say that if you have not made significant progress in the first 18 to 24 months, the probability or likelihood of that happening or catching fire over time decreases significantly. And so we knew that we had a short amount of time to make a significant amount of difference. We have turned over about a third of our workforce, so 1 in 3, which I think is very significant. People were expecting change. They wanted new energy. They wanted people from outside of the energy to complement the skills of the people in the industry. And so we've been able to do that. I have 8 new executives on my executive leadership team, which are incredible. It started with my hiring my chief human resources officer last year around this time, and she promised me in the interview a world-class workforce. And so we are working towards that every single day, and I'm really, really proud of the people that we have put in those seats. And so that was issue number one, stabilizing the leadership piece. But as you can imagine, if you come from outside of the industry, there's a lot of legwork and understanding that you have to marry with the industry. And so they accompanied me in different ways and fashions for the listening tour around the industry. A lot of times people say listening. Now we're at the point, though, James, that people are saying, okay, you've been listening. What are you doing? And so it was very nice as a culmination of that listening to actually have this tangible thing that we call the strategic plan, along with many other things that we can showcase to the industry. When they say, what have you been doing in the last year? We're able to showcase that in a very, very mighty way. Yeah.
I mean, a third of the staff and change, that's big, especially in that amount of time. It's been interesting to watch because a lot of people, when NAR was going through its issues, were concerned about whether it could make it, it could survive, what it was going to do. And, and obviously you, from being outside the industry coming in, there were obviously questions about that too. And I think you've done a phenomenal job. I mean, I've had an opportunity to get to know you over the past 12 months. And the thing I've learned about you is you are definitely, you move quick and make decisions quickly and get the organization turned. So you talk about, you talked about changing the human resource side. What are some of the other additions that you've made or changes to the leadership team since becoming the full-time CEO? What are some of those other roles that you focused on as you were diving in deeply into the organization?
Significant and in no order of importance. One of the things that you and your colleagues have been asking for is a lot more data. And so we have our first new chief data officer who's already hired, but he will be starting January 1. That is significant. Exciting. Data science used to roll up to IT, but when it's not a major focus, that's sort of how it shows up to the market. So we have a new chief data officer. We have a new general counsel and John McCloskey. And so while he's not new to the association, he's certainly new to the role. And he has been getting hit after hit after hit in terms of successes ever since he's been in his role, again, less than a year. We've got a new head of communications, and he's got a new right-hand person. And so when we were thinking about communications and marketing, we were hearing that NAR was showing up in silos, that we were not getting information out in a tangible way that was helping people. And so we're still fighting with that, James, because some people say we communicate too much and some people say we communicate too little. But we've got a new
Goldilocks.
Absolutely. I've been saying around the country, Goldilocks. Absolutely. I've been saying that exact thing, Keith. We've got a new SVP of education and events, which is super important. And so I think that the way that we've been showing up in the education and event space has been a bit lackluster. I think over time, we sort of seeded all of those conversations outside of NAR. And one of the reasons why we did not have the information is because we were not sort of holding the mantle there to make sure that we were hearing what was going on. I travel the country and my communications team travels with me, and I'm sitting in the audience hearing executives say the things that we need to be improving upon. Right? Why can't we be on the stage with them? Why can't we curate those expensive experiences where we hear that and understand that on our own? Of course, we've got Sherry Chris, right? And so her relationships have opened the door to many, many conversations. And to be very frank, people were so upset with NAR. I think the only reason they answered the phone is because her name came up on the caller. Right? That's not lost on me. And that's been significant. We've got a new leader, net new, never before, for our state and local associations. Imagine that. We didn't have anyone who was responsible for, at the executive level, talking to brokers, and we didn't have anyone at the executive level responsible for talking to the state and local associations. So what does that mean? No one was talking to them. So are we surprised, right, that we are
that felt siloed.
That we are where we are? So that's just a few examples of how we are looking at things. We are revamping the Center for Realtor Development. And while Mark Birschbach is certainly not new to the company, when I started, just by virtue of my title, I was the chair of RPR and CenturyLock, and those did not make sense given everything that we had to move. And so that is rolling up to the innovation umbrella. Why is that important? You're managing the relationships with startups. Oh, by the way, how does that connect to CenturyLock? Oh, by the way, how does that connect to RPR? So you are really putting talent where they belong in the most critical ways.
I got a question. on, and this is very high level. It's just as a leader, I don't know, I had a mentor once who said, you're 5 hires away from the life you want, right? And that always stuck with me. Thought that was a good one that I kept in the memory banks. Talent attraction really for any C-level executive is a huge component of the role. This isn't about NAR really at all. This is just about you as a leader. How do you approach hiring? Is there any, if someone was about to start a turnaround or a really, really important hire, what advice would you give them on how they find candidates?
I have had the fortune, Keith, of actually working at the CEO level for 2 companies that have had pretty extraordinary missions.
Yeah.
And so if I were, and this is no disrespect to any executive that sells widgets, it would be hard to go and get talent to sell widgets. I think when I was in undergrad, I heard the story about Steve Jobs trying to get talent from around the country. And I think one of the executives came from Pepsi and he said, do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life, or do you want to help me come and innovate? Right. And so he had dissected it all the way down to a sugar water type of concept. We are saying, do you want to come and help advance and protect property, home ownership rights for all Americans? There's something significant about that, right? And so to be able to say that is half the battle. And in a turnaround, what a lot of people don't realize is there's enough for everyone to get fed. You don't have to put in your elbows up because so much needs to get changed. And so when you are able to show people that they can bring their best self to work, that there's enough for them to gravitate towards and to manhandle and to wrangle, it's an easier proposition. But the last piece, though, and I think it's the most important piece, is whether you're hiring the first person or the 5th or the 6th, it must be a culture fit. Yeah. And so no matter how smart you are, if you don't know how to come in and liaise with others, it's not going to work.
It's great advice.
You know, I this is kind of an observation. You know, the leadership teams, this is again James Dwiggin speaking here only, but the leadership team previous, you know, if there were people that didn't agree with what NAR was doing, you know, there was a lot of movement away from supporting those outlets. And what I've really found unique about what you've brought to the organization since you've been there is that you're on the stages that have been traditionally less friendly. Having the conversations, having the tough conversations, taking fire from, you know, the audience and doing it with confidence and grace, which I personally have felt has been lacking from NAR for a long time. So Mike, I guess this question I'm asking is, how do you approach this from one leader to another of you wanted to come in, you've got this big task ahead, you know, an organization that needs to be turned around, that needs a new direction, and get the industry and everybody aligned on this path. And this is going to lead into the strategic plan conversation in a second, but I just want to know, like, how do you wake up every day knowing that you've got these shots coming at you and continuing to come back, taking them, and then moving your team into this new direction? Because I think a lot of people would look at this as a daunting task and would either just be like, yeah, this is too much, or it's, you know, it's going to be too big of a hill to climb. So I'm just curious, like, how over the past year you've been able to stay motivated and just work through this with the industry and so much turmoil in our business. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that or feedback?
Sure. I mean, let me be very clear. This is the hardest thing that I've ever done. But it is one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done. I know my skill set. I know what I can bring to bear, and I know what my partners who I've hired can help me do. Right? There isn't a day where they don't say, can I help shoulder this for you? Right. This is extraordinarily difficult. And there are days, James, that I forget. And I do become upset, and I do take things personally. But every single morning I still get up at the same time coming to add value. It's because I know what we can do. I know that the path is narrow, but I also know that I have surrounded myself with the right people. When I was at the Chicago Sun-Times, I kept saying, oh my gosh, there are some things at this place that are just crazy. And my legal team said, well, Nykia, I'll tell you how we got here, right? C leaders hire D players hire F players, right? And so I hire A players And not only am I managing the rest of the industry, but I am managing the
bunch of A players. Yeah.
of a bunch of A players, which adds a whole nother level of complexity.
Yeah.
But if we get it right, though, it won't be hard for a long time. If I end up hiring people who are just yes people and let me get through the day, oh man, will it be difficult? And so all of those things come to bear.
It's a
man, I hope y'all were listening to that one. Like, we should just rewind it and play that part twice. That was solid. Like, because I mean, you do have, look, you've done difficult things before. You've I don't know. There's some social media knucklehead who says confidence doesn't come from screaming affirmations into the void. It comes from keeping promises to yourself, right? And so you've had a history of doing this before at other companies, probably throughout your entire career.
It's never been as public, though. This is public.
Yeah.
And that's the blessing, though, where I wasn't here. I didn't rise through the ranks. And so some people recognize that as she's here to help. Some don't recognize that distinction, and that's fair, I guess. But I would not be genuine if I said, "Oh, everything's rosy, it's fine." No, there are days where I do not want to hear anything that anyone attached anything to.
Yeah, you're human. Yeah.
I bumped into you at an event in part of your listening tour. And I'm someone who really am kind of a terrible networker, but I love conversations. So I just decided I was going to try to talk to you for a long time because then I didn't have to network. It was really selfish. Sorry about that. So in order to do that, I was going to ask you a lot of questions. And I remember after that thinking, dang, she sure is good at answering them, but asking them too. As you went on this listening tour and collected data and information, it had to transition from listening to doing. Was that like a bright line? Like, okay, I'm going to listen for 90 days and then it's time? Or how does a leader,
no.
How do you do that sort of transitioning from listening to doing?
It's both. So some of it is coming in as a turnaround executive, knowing I don't need the industry to wait 3 months to tell me what to start doing. I could sort of observe from my own instincts what was broken and what needed to be fixed. And a lot was broken. I would argue, without sort of airing too much, that way more was broken than most people even realize. I think people have their pet thing that frustrates them the most. Well, I've been able to see the entire landscape and understand a lot of frustration. So it was both. It was my observations on what I needed to fix, also hearing things. And that's even the same with the strategic plan. Yes, we say that our launch date is January 1st, but we've been working on some things for several months that are going to manifest and create that flywheel effect. It's not sequential at all, Keith. It's parallel.
Right. Yeah, you got to fix the plane while you're flying it. Yes. I think is one of those analogies that gets tossed around. Yeah, makes sense.
While FAA is not getting paid.
Yeah. All of that. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's transition to that then, because I'm sure Keith and I will have more questions along the way here. But let's talk about this new strategic plan that was just passed. Keith and I had to go through it really fast. But you laid out 3 major parts to consider, and I would love for you to go deeper on this. So you've got the industry and economic pressures, the stakeholder expectations, and then the organizational constraints. It's like kind of your three different paths on that. So can you give us some like insight on all of this? I'm assuming this is based upon all of this listening tour and hearing lots of feedback from people, but dive in on that. Talk to us about what you uncovered and we'll start there.
Sure. So, and I walk around with my cheat sheet all the time because it is complex.
Go.
So the purpose of that, James and Keith, was really to show the industry that there are so many complexities that we are trying to manage. If we don't start and level set with that, people will say, did you take this into consideration? Did you take that? I heard about this. I heard about that. So we wanted to say, yes, the strategic planning committee and my staff ultimately took all of these things into consideration. The macroeconomic pressures that we cannot change, but we can influence. Those are things like the low inventory, the high interest rates. inconsistent professionalism is that thing that we can manage in certain parts of our strategic plan, but we don't have the entire span of control on that, right? And depending upon who you ask, they have different ways for you to solve that, but that will be an industry-wide coming together. How do we manage professionalism and therefore sort of elevate that? New competitors and entrants, as well as people leaving the industry. And so, of course, going back to economic rules, people continue to enter an industry as long as profits are greater than zero. So even today, I read an article where there's a startup that just launched in the industry. So that goes to show you that people believe that there's value and there is an economic model. Now, is everyone getting it right? Not necessarily. Our numbers say that there are 85,000 brokerages in the United States. That's a lot. And so it should not scare us in any way that there may be more consolidation on the way. Right? We read about some companies also exiting, but did they exit because the business model was broken, or did they exit because maybe they didn't implement and the leadership probably wasn't right? And so all of those are things that the strategic planning committee at the macroeconomic level had to consider. Certainly industry changing technologies as well. When I mentioned the organizational constraints, that was sort of saying, okay, what is within my span of control? Right. Even though a lot of people put my name to a lot of things that are going on in the industry, we have to remember that as CEO, I am not a voting member of the leadership team. And so there are a lot of things that are passed down to me that I must inherit. And through efficiency gains, growth, and the like, how do I manage that to move the industry forward? But I don't have a sort of say in that overall direction. But what are those constraints? We had an unclear value proposition. Shifting member sentiment. We've had a baseline that it was really sobering. Weakened realtor brand, communication issues out of the wazoo, and then challenges to the association structure and governance. And then there was one more bucket, James, and that's the diverse stakeholders. So we used to say consumers, but in a post-settlement world, it's buyers and sellers separated because of their different needs and how we have to go to market differently. Okay. State and local associations, brokerages, MLSs, policymakers, and media.
I mean, I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
And it's a lot.
It's a monster.
I mean, I don't even know where to start on this. So did you do this in silos? Like, did you start meeting with people in these different silos? Like, what was the process for coming up with all of this? How did it start?
Yeah. It started with the strategic planning committee. So a lot of people talk about our governance is broken, and absolutely there are aspects of our governance that are broken. But in our constitution and bylaws, we have a strategic planning committee. We have not leveraged that properly in the past. This is the first time in certainly recent memory or history where we are leveraging the authoritative assets that we have, a la the strategic planning committee, and moving forward. So we hired a consultant to facilitate the conversation. The first thing that they had to agree upon are these things. What are the dynamic pressures that are going on around the industry? Then they were fed tons of information to support what some of these things are. We had internal information that they were given, so we had our own research statistics, but we didn't stop there. We had the external things as well. You all are very familiar with the danger report and the opportunity report. When we look at our bibliography, though, we have 50 some odd list of 50 some odd things that really shed light on this. We did our own SWOT analysis. We took into consideration the up and coming association. We did the pest analysis. So everyone knows SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Fewer people know pest, but that's political, economical, technological, and social. So sometimes it's pets, sometimes it's pests, that type of thing. Right. We also looked at other aspects of the industry. People are concerned about the change in climate. So all of those things. Who is the realtor of tomorrow? How are they going to show up? Are people going to continue with single transactions, or is there a move toward teams? Is the average age of a realtor creeping up given the other macroeconomic pressures and people leaving sort of a corporate type of job and coming in? So there was a 50-page report that had all of those things in it. Then they had to start deliberating what will be our implicit and explicit oath to the industry. But before they got too far, we started pumping in information that we were having from interviews around the country. Right. This is what the brokers are saying. This is what other people are saying. This is what the focus groups are saying. We did a focus group of 68,000 people to understand our member transformation. We did a separate survey, of 75,000 people. So we've covered over 150,000 people in focus groups and surveys. The meeting that you attended on October 13th and 14th, all of those leaders across those 2 days represent about 700,000 realtors and agents. If we have 1.4 million members, you see how we're getting up to what does the industry want. And so it's not guessing. But once the strategic planning committee said, okay, these are the things, then those tear sheets that you saw that I can discuss later are where my company internal takes over. If they're saying that we need to do these things, then I go to my leaders and say, okay, within your jurisdiction, within your budget, how can you be accountable to these things? And that's how it came together. We would hear from the strategic planning committee. We would have advisory council meetings, which was my staff, throw it back over the fence for about 4 to 6 months time to then come up with a plan that quite frankly, you could close your eyes and say, this is what they said in the focus groups and this is what the brokerage said. And I would say there's 80% overlap in the complaints and what we needed to change.
I'd love to dig in on that a little bit because you mentioned the survey stuff and it was 68,000. Is that what you said? I think it was
68 was the initial.
Was the initial. Yeah. So like, can you give us some insight on, what you can on like what some of those surveys were? Just I'm asking the questions. I'm just thinking about people are always skeptical, but like, I'd love to hear the positives, but also some of the negatives. Like what did people say about, NAR and what needs to change? I'd love to hear like any insights you can provide from that as well.
Sure. And I don't mind starting with the negative, James, because I think people really need to understand what we're grappling with. And I actually carry this around because one, it's sobering and two, it's succinct. And the conversations that we've had were private with some of these brokerage CEOs, but it's super important that everyone hears. They said, what are they saying? What are they saying? Well, they were very clear, and you were in a room or two, James, that the clarity was significant, Keith. So collectively, the CEOs of these companies have an issue with the trust and transparency. In our focus groups as well, we could not leave a focus group without everyone unanimously saying you need to rebuild trust. But specifically as it relates to the broker community, they said the old NAR was dysfunctional, financially undisciplined, lacks transparency, and wasn't accountable to members or the industry. And this is how I started off socializing the plan. I wanted everyone to sort of be as sober as I was with these
where you were
comments. And the other thing too that we need to understand is when they say old NAR, they're not just talking about Chicago and DC. They are talking about the states and locals as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
It's all of it.
And so all of it, right? Brokers have not felt that they've had a role at NAR and that they were not consulted on key matters. This goes well beyond the settlement. There is a school of thought where people keep saying, well, all they have to do is if they want to be involved, they need to go through the volunteer ranks. And I'm saying, okay, but hold on. Let's really think about what these people are grappling with. Right. And I think of you and I think of your colleagues trying to manage businesses across multiple states. No one has that kind of time. Trying to manage margins, trying to set up new businesses, trying to figure out diversified income streams. They don't have time to go up through that. And so how do we meet them where they are?
Right.
Communication. They want that clear line of demarcation between the local, state, and national. Governance. You can't escape governance, and you know this, right? And so a lot of people are questioning, are there mainly people, and this is a question, that are doing 3 to 5 transactions a year who are making decisions on the entire ecosystem? Are you bringing into your deliberation all of the business models? Are you over-indexing on traditional brokerages and not thinking about the discount and everything in between, right? And so we have to be very sober about that. The realtor brand, putting daylight between the realtor and the licensee. Legal risk is that other thing, as you know. So the ongoing litigation, and we've done a lot of work in this area. We just have to continue to socialize it. And then last is tools and technology. And so what the brokers don't want is for us to compete against them. And what the realtors want is for us to be clear about the services that we provide. And so there was significant overlap in those things, which made, honestly, the strategic plan easier to go forward.
It sort of gave you the walls of the sandbox? Is that?
Yeah, the walls.
So
absolutely.
Like I'm going to play in here, and this is my space, and this is where I can create. If it's outside of that, doesn't mean it shouldn't be addressed. That just might be a different group or a different person. Is that kind of what you're saying? Or
yeah, absolutely. And remembering what the main boulders are that we need to move.
The big rocks.
The strategic plan is not a tactical operations plan that has everything that we're doing, but it is our oath that these are the things that we are going to focus on to manage the turnaround.
Let me ask you this, because I think this is the elephant in the room that, speaking for large brokerages, actually it doesn't even large brokerages, just in general. You mentioned it and we kind of touched on it. And I know you probably can't go too deep on this, but I think one of the general themes that the industry is worried about is the governance part.
Yes.
And like, I sit there and go, you're in this role. You're the most qualified person we've had in a long time. And I worry that the governance structure isn't going to allow you to make the changes that need to be made for shifting this tanker ship to be where we need to go. And this is just me speaking out loud, but when you talk about governance changes, is this a real conversation we're having now about what governance needs to look like and where, I guess, things need to come back more to staff versus volunteer leadership? I don't know what I'm asking here. I guess I'm just throwing out sort of thoughts.
Right. So here's what is interesting. I can have a conversation with you and I can tell someone about our conversation, or they can hear it from you.
Yeah.
October 13th and 14th were very, very sobering. I even had longtime staff in the back of the room, and afterwards they said, "Oh my gosh, was our reputation that bad?" There's something to be said about the ecosystem hearing these things. Even before I started socializing the plan, I start off with those things that I just told you. That's sobering. So no one's raising their hand saying, "Oh my gosh, there's this thing that I'm really passionate about. And where's that in the plan?" I've not gotten that once. And the reason is because everyone sort of understands what time it is, right? Frankness, urgency requires frankness. And the frankness that we have heard things, our ability to come back and say these things, my communications team travels with me. Bennett is sitting behind stage sometimes and he hears things. We can't escape the feedback. And so in the short term, there are a lot of things that we need to fix with governance, and we've already begun that. The appetite when I say leadership team, I'm talking about the volunteer leadership. When I say executive team, I talk about my executives. The appetite at the leadership team is serious, and it's been serious since I started. That's the only reason.
I do know that too. Yeah.
That team is serious. And so we want to move these boulders out of the way, and we have already begun that. Something as simple as this Thursday and one Thursday and Friday, I had the staff go through staff executive training. We were hearing around the industry that my staff were telling people what to do in committees, and they didn't really know the line of demarcation in their roles and responsibilities. Well, we're actually getting trained on that, first of its kind. The entire thing is going to be much more successful. I don't think that I'm worried that it's not going to get done. I think my worry is going to be, will we meet the pace that the industry requires to get it? That's what keeps me up at night. I think it can be done.
How do you balance this directness that's required for speed, right, and consensus building at the same time? Do those two things have a natural tension, or is it just this is the job? And you get where I'm coming from?
Yes, they would have a natural tension if this weren't so public. This thing is public.
Public. Yeah. Everybody's got an opinion.
Everyone has an opinion. They are not afraid to say it. And so we are hearing that, even though people think that we are not listening. Now, people have different ideas about how to solve them. What we are trying to do is find that sort of mass appeal piece and start there and build the foundational pieces. So, for example, you've read and you've heard some people think that we should get people from publicly traded companies to be on the board. Other people think that if we were more organized, that we could do it in a different way. And so there are people coming at it differently. But what they have in common is this is not working for me.
Right.
I do not have the transparency. The agility is not there. The collective thought is not there. You have not considered my business model. An outside person would consider my business model. Someone from a publicly traded company would have more accountability, right? And so I'm solving for accountability. I'm solving for the things that are within my control.
Makes sense.
Just as a comment, because I was going through the material, there was the how satisfied are you with membership, with your membership with NAR question. 49% said somewhat or very satisfied, 23% were neutral, and only 28% of that said not at all or not very satisfied. And I'm only making that comment because the 28% tend to be the most vocal, but that number, I don't know how to put this. I thought that number would be higher based upon the tone and just like how much stuff has gone on the past year. So you actually have a really good baseline to work from and get that neutral to be in the positive column. And then statistically speaking, that's a really good metric. So, I mean, that's got to feel good from that standpoint too, at least. I mean, I would feel it.
Now, again, I don't want to take anything away from us, but you know how direct I am.
Yeah.
That's post Jared and post Sherry, right? That's post leaders going in and winning some pro se lawsuits and getting things done. That wasn't day one. It's just our baseline for the year.
And your listening tour. Don't discount that.
Yes.
Right?
Now I'm happy about that, James, but I'm saying, how can those two statements be right? How can your instinct say it should be higher? Well, it could have been higher a year ago about the team that I have that's helping me fix that thing.
Fair. So then, really it's really rubber's going to meet the road a year from now to see after the strategic plan is fully implemented, which is January, I think you said, is when it starts to go.
It starts, and it's not going to be fully implemented till 2028, but we've got significant projects between now and then.
Let's move into that then, because I want to make sure we get into the strategic plan. So talk to us about this next 3 years. I don't even know what to ask. I'm going to let you dive in. So it's your
frame
plan.
It up for us first.
Frame it up for us, and then talk about what you're planning to do over the next 3 years with it.
One of the other things that we did was when we interviewed and focus grouped and surveyed people, we validated what a future would look like and how would we move, James, to that from not satisfied to neutral, from neutral to satisfied. And they gave us the things that they said, if you do these things correctly, you will essentially over-index on providing value to me. Therefore, I will see value in your association.
Yep.
It's helping them thrive in their day-to-day business. Significant. It's building a proactive organization. It's driving collaborative solutions. It's rebuilding the partnership foundations. Partnerships, brokerages, it's institute societies and councils, it's MLSs, it's state and local associations. It's protecting and advancing the legal interests of realtors, recommitting to professionalism, advocating for property ownership for all, and cultivating trust in the realtor brand. Now, I have 75 projects that ladder up to that to think to do it. It's a big number, but it's doable. But it's a big number. And so I'll just pick one of them that I thought was very interesting and new to the industry. When John McCloskey is challenged with, when the strategic planning committee came to him and said, okay, we need you to work with the industry partners to pursue favorable legal outcomes. How are you going to do it? One of his projects is to create and mediate legal forums around the country. Why is this important? And you know this when you travel around the country, and I've seen this and witnessed it. I'll go to RIS Media, I'll go to Inman, I'll go to all of these places. I'm in the audience, and I'm hearing a panel of people telling what NAR should be doing. Okay, NAR needs to be in the room more. NAR needs to be a part of these conversations, James. But in an antitrust compliant way, why can't we host some of them? So John is committing to doing that, right? So we hear from you, we hear from others around the country. Have you thought about this in terms of antitrust? Have you thought about this? Where's this going next? I think that this is a risk. Well, we get to bring the people in the room and really have that conversation collaboratively, right? As a partner in the ecosystem to move that forward. And that's how the whole plan sort of comes out. One of them is when we're talking about helping them thrive in their day-to-day business, it's providing foundational and continuous education opportunities. So we just recently launched another survey of 150,000 people where we are going around asking them how we can be better in education. Yes, we have credentials. Yes, we have designations. But what about those mini hits? We're going to be talking to people like you, James, around the country. We're talking to education directors. We're talking to the instructors. We're talking to the states and locals where we can co-create material. And so that's just taking NAR out of this ivory tower saying, throw this over. This is the education. Well, no, you all are much closer to the realtors and the agents. And so this is how we co-create. This is how we help you all punch above your weight class. This is how you get to invest in AI and other tools while we help you with foundational support. And so if we continue to do that bit by bit around the industry, that's how this plan comes to life.
I love the part, everyone who's listening is going to be not surprised with this statement. I love the legal forum part.
Shocker.
Well, look, and I think, I know it was
just
you're
for
very
you,
strategic with your strategic. But what is just interesting, I think, for me is having done as many keynotes as I have over this past, year and a half. I think the industry is actually looking and dying for someone to just be like this. You're not telling us, but you're going, these are the things to watch for. These are the things to pay attention to, because there hasn't been that previously. And I know the frustration is we just want some guidance on what to do and what not to do. By the way, I've met John, and he and I chatted at an event. He's great. I got to spend some time with him. And he had, for viewers and listeners, he was actually starting to do what you just said. He was on a panel going, these are the things not to do. These are things to watch for, and it felt like there was a shift. Whereas before you wouldn't have been on that panel at all, because it would have been like, we're not giving anything legal to anybody. And I could sense in the room, because it was a room of about 150 brokers, there was a real shift in the tone and the feeling in the room of like, we're starting to see that change. And I think it's a good move. I think it's a really good move. We're in a very our industry has a target on its back for litigation. So,
and this is where people like you are important to the ecosystem, James, because legal teams will tell you their whole existence is to keep you out of trouble by any means necessary.
Right.
So they will pick the path of least resistance.
Always.
We have to bring in the practitioners to overlay what are those commercial applications. And what I like most about John and his team is their openness to do that. They don't want to be the main attraction. They don't have main character syndrome, right? They understand that we have to bring in the commercial overlay and get perspectives from around the country.
Keith, you want to jump in here on anything before I keep diving? So
I don't. I'm writing down main character syndrome because that was awesome. Whereas sometimes I feel like never mind. I won't even. But yes, I do. How does it get from? And you can pick any of the examples that you want. You've shared several. But how does it get from this 30,000 foot view all the way down to some
really good question
independent in Iowa who's got a handful of agents and is just trying to put food on their table? You get where I'm coming from? Like, how do you get it all the way down to that level? Because I think that's intrinsically part of like the struggle. It's such a big organization and there's so many different people that you're trying to reach. How do you get it from 30,000 to a dining room or a conference room?
So when I talked about helping realtors start in their day-to-day business all the way to cultivating the trust in the realtor brand, there are 24 initiatives associated with that. One initiative is work with industry partners to pursue favorable legal outcomes. There are 24 of those. But there could be 4 projects associated with that key. Here's where I'm going. As a turnaround executive, hearing people say that they don't understand what people internally at NAR are doing, I have a responsibility to be transparent and accountable to that. So we've actually taken those projects and brought them all the way down to the molecular level. Every single one of those projects has an executive sponsor on my team. It has a list on that project of the multiple departments that they must liaise with and influence in order to get it done. It has a list of the projects associated with doing that. It has the list of the leaders that are 1 or 2 levels down in the organization on who's going to be responsible for it. It has milestones. When I've told people that we are comparing ourselves to a publicly traded company and showing up that way, what do I mean by that? We have a milestone for every single quarter. So while I'm not giving out a quarterly report, every quarter when we meet with our executive committee, we are giving them a status report on where things are, what our challenges are, where we need their help thinking through those things. We also have an investment. We are redoing the budgeting, reallocating, making it much more transparent and understanding within a 95% confidence interval or so, how much of the budget are we allocating to this? And we're adding a priority to that. What does that mean? That means at any given time, I know exactly what my staff are doing, which is super important.
Yeah.
When I'm traveling the country and people say, have you thought about this? Yes. How do I know? Because I've seen what they're working on. I know 75 projects that are in flight. Other executives know what the other executives are doing. People said, we don't trust you and we experience your organization in silos. Well, education sees what marketing is doing, sees what advocacy is doing, sees what comms is doing, sees what research is doing. Everyone knows what everyone is doing. Now, from there, Keith, when we're traveling the country, now we can tell people when they say, have you considered, what are you doing with climate? Oh, we know that advocacy has this on the docket, right?
Yeah.
Now we can talk about return on member dollars. So when people are saying, I pay you $201 per year, what are you giving me in return? Well, we saved you $40,000 over the last 2 years with XYZ initiative, right?
Right.
Research reports and time and materials and expenses that you didn't have to pay. We saved you this. So there's this big return on member dollars to say, in exchange for $201, you got $8,000 worth of value.
Yeah.
You really began to tell people what you advocated for last week, what education opportunities they have from the Center for Realtor Development, what the economic pressures are in their specific market. There's certainly at the national level, but what's happening in Wichita, right? How can we then help you? How can we talk to the state and local association in Kansas, right, to help you in different ways? Once you understand at the molecular level what people are doing, then you can say, well, have you considered this? Or maybe you should get rid of that and reallocate your time here.
So what I heard you say is you've got the who, the how, and the what, right? So you know who's doing it, how they're doing it, what they're doing. And then there's this feedback loop. Yeah. That's awesome. I mean,
and there's the why. We also put at each one of these, what need is this addressing? Why is it important for us to discuss legal outcomes? Why is it important for education to be important? Why is it important that we should be the first voice?
I love the accountability, by the way. It's refreshing. And that's not meant to be critical about our industry or our organization, but, with volunteer leadership, it's hard sometimes. We obviously run a large company and we have committees and things, and a lot of times it's pulling teeth to get committees to do anything. But I love the fact that you're
not ours. Really, if you're listening, we love you.
Yeah. But I love the fact that you're holding the departments accountable and making sure that things are getting done, and you're treating it like a business. You've said that publicly, that you're treating this much more like a business. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I believe you've said that a few times, and I think that's a good thing. I think that's a change we needed to make a while ago.
Well, we're serving business people, right? We're serving entrepreneurs. We're serving CEOs. We're serving those people, and we need to be better servant leaders, I think. And then the other piece too, and this is where I am okay with indicting NAR and not the volunteer leadership. The volunteer leadership, if they ask us for data or if they ask us for information, they make decisions off of what we give them. And so my commitment is that we are giving them more informed, data-rich information to therefore downstream make their decisions richer. Yeah. So we do have a responsibility of guiding the volunteer leadership with better information.
Yeah. All right. Last question, because I know you're busy. So I guess maybe it's more of a selfish question just because it was there, but you called out 3 major priorities to the brokerage community, both when I was there in October, but it's a highlight in this thing as well. So budget transformation, de-risking the portfolio, and governance. Can you talk to us about that and why you set these as the priority, just for context?
Sure. So I'm a finance major. Someone asked me at some point early on in my tenure here, if I were not a CEO, what role would I have within NAR? I would want to be CFO. I believe that you should be able to look at financial statements and to not only determine the health of an organization, but without seeing the strategic plan, you should see where an organization's priorities are. The budget book that I have seen over the last few years appears to be an accounting chart of accounts with numbers and cost associated with them. It's not an informative document. It does not sort of tell us the health of the programs that we are in. And so the budgeting process is important. One, we still have $200+ million to pay. Two, if we are trying to plan for the future, operational resilience has to be a priority. And in order to do that, we have to understand where all of the fat in the organization is. And so we are overhauling that thing. And so when people say, do we have enough capital for this? Well, we need to build for that, which means we need to cut the fat out.
Yep.
And so we've balanced 2 budgets. I am not saying, oh my gosh, we're amazing because we did that. That just showed as a signal that was step 1 of many. So that's super important. De-risking the portfolio. Sadly, last year was the first time that we've looked at this comprehensively with an outside law firm. So NAR over time has just created and collected rules. And so I said, wait a minute, do any of these overlap? Let's check on that. And so that's when John McCloskey really came on my radar. He was leading that. I thought he was incredible. And so it's easy to say, will be our general counsel. So continuing to look at that. And James, a lot of people think that we're just talking about MLS rules. We're talking about the entire portfolio of rules. 10.5 is included in that. And it looks like we ended up being on the right side of history. And then governance is, as you said, we have got to be more agile. We've got to be debating the right things, and it's got to be data informed. If we don't do any of those things, everything else is going to be lip service in terms of our projects. Those are the foundational pieces of any business that is calling itself a business, regardless of your tax status. And so those are the primary things that we're working on.
You know, I will say this, there's a lot of people who have, a lot of opinions about NAR, some right, some of them probably not, at least in my opinion. But I will say this is important. If you guys want, for viewers and listeners, if you want NAR to change, you've got a fantastic CEO who's actually trying to make this happen. And there couldn't be a better time for being involved in the discussion than right now. I think you probably are all witnessing that in this conversation. But I have said, and I continue to say it, that NAR is an incredibly important part of our existence. Yes, it needs a lot of work. Nykia is obviously taking that on. But there's an opportunity for us to put the past behind and reshape this thing. So I would encourage you, viewers and listeners, to speak up, share stuff. You've got a leadership team that wants to make these things, both the volunteer and full-time leadership team. And, Nykia, from just because I've had an opportunity to spend time with you, thank you, like genuinely. I worry that somebody else that was actually from the industry would not have taken this on to the degree that you have, and addressed so, vulnerably the issues that are there. Because I think it's good to restore that faith, and that credit comes from being able to go, yep, these are the things that we got really wrong, and this is what we got to fix. And then heading that stuff off at the pass is just going to restore that trust. So thanks for that. Appreciate the interview today. Keith, do you want to throw anything in there?
I would. I've been very impressed by, and maybe I'll sort of do it in story form. It's really hard for people to talk mess when you're in front of them, right? And your willingness to go in any stage, in any room, knowing it's like people are geared up and probably coming in that room with unkind things to say. And I've seen you in a handful of rooms handle all sorts of different conversations with grace and elegance. You don't shy away from it. You lean in to the difficult conversations. I don't know if this is true, but it's the surfacey ones where you're like, yeah, okay, yeah, but doesn't anybody got a hard question for me? That's almost how it feels when I see you talking to people. The hard questions are hard. And, when someone asks me my favorite color, I'm being hyperbolic intentional. Yeah. And then I get the comments on, she was talking about her favorite color. It's like, well, that's what they asked me. I can't control that. Yeah. Right. So a lot of people pay lip service to being willing to go into the room. And I've seen this throughout the entire team. And that's how you start change. I mean, I've done nothing like what you've done, but I've turned around some real estate offices, and at a very, very micro scale, I just knew if I just show up every day and don't leave, then it's going to be hard for them to talk mess about me while I'm standing in the building. Right. Mm-hmm. And I've seen you at a much grander scale and with much more elegance than I could ever do it. But doing doing a similar thing where you're just like, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to keep talking to you. I'm going to keep listening to you. And you will not like every decision I make, but you'll at least understand why I made it. And that to me is leadership.
Respect that.
That to me is leadership. So thank you for that. The industry needs it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Nykia, thanks for being here. Congrats on this achievement. And as you know, we're here to help support you and make the organization thrive. So we'll have you back on again. Hopefully not in a year's time, but we'll have you back on again to share updates. And
I'm going to add, what's your favorite color to the interview question? It's purple. Okay, same as my daughter.
There's the news headline. By the way,
that's right. Yeah, there it is. That's what they'll pick up. Thank you.
All
for
right,
everything
Nykia,
you're doing.
appreciate you as always.
Thanks so much.
You got it. Talk soon.
Bye.
We don't like secrets around here, so subscribe and share this podcast with anyone and everyone. Who knows? They just might learn something.